right, we're ready to rock and roll. Are you?
I'm ready.
So you are ready to keep doing this week after week?
I'll do as much as you want.
All right, perfect. All right. So can I set a little bit of a topic for you, and then we roll from there?
I don't know what we're doing here, other than that I know we're having a conversation. So I don't know what we're even talking about. And so
yes,
you
that is
you
by
lead.
design.
Yeah, you lead. I'll follow.
So this will be our general premise: is that I will kind of get us rolling on something, and we just want to see what comes out of your brain because we love it, we enjoy it. So no filter, just bring it. Well, light filtering. Just bring it out, and we'll go from there.
This makes me nervous because I'll tell you. Normally when I preach, right, so I'm an external processor by nature, right? That is my nature. Like I'll think and talk at the same time often as I'm working through. In fact, I've learned the etiquette, right? Like in relationships, I'm like, hey, I don't even know if I like this idea. I just want to try it on for size. I'm going to verbally process.
By the way, you need to tell everybody, because there are a lot of external processors in the world, you need to tell them your verbiage that you use right now.
Yeah.
That is super helpful. I say it. I know a lot of people I work with say it now. You got to give them the language you use.
Yeah, so I'll just say, hey, I'm gonna externally process this. I don't know if I like it or not. I just need to say it out loud. What else do I say?
No, you say, I'm not married to it.
Oh yeah, I'm not married to the idea, but I want to date it for a second,
And sometimes if you're really into something, you'll be like, I might be popping the question. Like I might be engaged to this.
Exactly.
Not married. So you're really good. Sometimes you even go as far as to be like, I'm casually dating this idea.
That's
like
right.
You're very clear.
I'm courting. We're courting.
Courting this. It's a supervised date. But I actually think that's super helpful for people that are external processors or for the rest of us that are listening to an external processor, because it can be easy to hear the thing that the person is saying, and they're saying it with excitement.
Yes.
And so you think like, this is the plan of action they want to take.
That's right.
But if you backtrack a little bit and you give that preface of like, I'm not saying this is what we should do. This is what's happening in my head right now, and it's coming out in real time. Then we know, like, wait until he says fire to actually activate on a plan.
That's why I had to develop the conversational etiquette, because even like from an organizational leadership standpoint, right? If let's say you're leading the team or whatever, and you start in on some idea or some thought, everybody's sitting there writing down going, okay, this is what he thinks, or this is what she wants to do. And I'm trying to figure it out, like, but they take it as like he's being decisive, or in fact, I might be saying it like I'm sure of the idea, but I'm really not.
Right.
And then, of course,
you're trying on for size what it feels like to be sure of the idea.
And then people get confused because I talk myself into a 180 in 15 minutes, and they're like, this dude doesn't have any idea what he's doing, and so it becomes confusing. So are we doing it or are we not doing it? So I'll kind of announce it. Hey, I'm going to externally process this. Don't hold me to it, so by the time I get to Sunday and I'm preaching a message, I have done that a lot on those ideas. So I feel really strong about what I'm saying. And that's one of the things that makes me a little nervous about these, because these conversations, I might be externally processing something. It ends up on a soundbite, and somebody's like, he thinks that. And I'm like, you know what? If you kept watching, 2 minutes later, I was going to say it was a dumb idea, or I don't agree with it anymore, or something like that.
Maybe we put that in the show notes.
Well,
it's like all opinions expressed are not necessarily final.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and some of it, who knows, if I say something stupid or whatever, you can delete it later.
That's
Which, by the way, again, makes me nervous, because the other day we were in a conversation with another guy, a friend of ours, and I got in the car, and you were like, yo, I think you overshared a little bit, and I was like, wait, what? You're like, yo, you made that guy pretty uncomfortable. And you're like, you didn't pick up on that signal, I was like, no, I didn't. I thought he was fine. You're like, he looked uncomfortable. And I was like, you thought I overshared? You're like, I think you might have overshared. And I'm like, that's why I'm scared of this podcast.
I shouldn't have.
Because I'm like, what if I overshare? And then it's on and you can't take it back.
Well,
so again, we can delete later.
I was going to say, felt cute, might delete later. We're fine. Okay, so let's hop into the topic a little bit. One of the things that was thrown out to me was, actually, I talked to the staff last week a little bit about change. And so we thought, that might be kind of an interesting jumping off point for today too, because it is so accurate not just for what you and I have been going through and the people close to us in our lives. For anyone who doesn't know, Greg is the pastor of ONE.CHURCH. I guess we probably should have introduced ourselves. Hi, I'm Shaylyn.
That's what lower thirds are for. But
but if you're listening to all audio,
True.
You cannot read my imaginary lower
right.
third. So I'm Shaylyn. This is Greg. And Greg is the pastor of ONE.CHURCH in Columbus, Ohio. I am his wife, kind of just the, I don't know, catch-all person
the wind
that
beneath
helps.
my wings.
I like that. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And we are starting this podcast not just to talk about specifically Christian things or church-related things, but just let's talk about life in general. So one of the things that we are going through right now as a church is this massive build-out plan, this 3-year growth plan. The church is growing, which is an amazing thing, but it's also hard at times, right? Change, even good change, brings some complications along with it. People have complications in their personal lives. Change, quite frankly, we've all experienced as an entire world. The landscape of our world has changed since 2020, and the way that things are done and the things that we've experienced, we've all experienced change on a massive scale. And so I think it is a very appropriate topic. And so there was actually something that you had said last Sunday, and you were talking about patience, but it hit me that it was really appropriate and in line with change too. You were telling a story about yourself and an instance where you needed to have patience. It was actually, you and I had an interaction where you felt like you wish you would have had more patience with me, but then you had patience in this very professional setting with someone else. And you said, the quote that you said at the end of it was, you realized you had to restructure your life in such a way that you could have room for patience. Because life gets overwhelming, and the first thing to get crowded out is your fuse gets shorter, right? Your patience gets shorter. And it hit me, that's true for change too, because change is coming no matter what we do. You can't stop change from happening in your life. But you can restructure your life in such a way that you're more prepared for it. Obviously, some things are going to come out of the blue and surprise you. Nobody's prepared for, a cancer diagnosis or something like that. But you can make room in your life for change, or change will just come and push whatever it wants off your plate to make room for itself. And so structuring our lives in such a way that we make room for change. And you looked like you had a thought. I don't want to talk over top of you there.
Yeah, no, I've got a lot of thoughts. So I think it's like change. You have to do some emotional budgeting, right? So if you think of budgeting your money, right, and you'd go, hey, we're going to give this and we're going to invest that, and then we're going to save, right? So you would save, whatever you would, ideally 3 to 6 months of expenses or something like that, or you have a savings account because, like you said, the hot water heater goes out, something happens, right, you didn't see coming, and you have to have the margin, otherwise you go into debt. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to emotion, if I'm running the rev limiter, my life is with the nature of our family or the nature of my schedule or lots of pressure at work. We're in making hay in this season of time or whatever it is. And you go, I am absolutely right on the verge of a burnout, and you live there. Well, then when the unexpected thing happens, you don't have savings. You don't have margin, right? And that's what we see of Jesus. Even, he would go retreat. He would go into the wilderness. He would go be with the Father or be in solitude. And essentially, he's building up his account. He's building up his emotional savings account. Otherwise, again, then you go into emotional debt if you don't. And then what happens there, right? Now I'm in the red. And that's where I think probably the most short-sighted, bad decisions, the biggest regrets come when we're in emotional debt. We just, the change was coming too fast. We're overwhelmed, and now we're trying to cope in some way. We're looking for some sort of anesthesia, some sort of adrenaline rush, something to get me, feeling good because I'm at a deficit. And so I think ordering your life, stepping back, flying up to 30,000 feet, looking at your life and going, we've done that many times, right? We're particularly with our middle son, was going through a time where it just simply being his parents was extremely emotional and difficult, and it was every day felt like failure, and it felt like no matter how hard we tried, we weren't getting it. And then you start to get wiped out. So you got to start saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to say no to this. I'm not going to travel as much. We're not going to be as available as we were. We're going to reorder our life, and then we're really prioritize things like physical health, because I go, man, if I don't have physical energy to support, to even have the juice to be able to be his dad, all right? So you now have to step back, look at your life, and make sure that you're not operating in a deficit. Even like when we found out that both the boys had autism, we literally sat down and talked and discussed, are we in the right job? Like, can I do this job and be their dad? Because I'm going to be their dad first. Like, I will not shirk that duty, but can I do that and be the pastor of this church the way it's supposed to be? Or do I need to find another job? Because what I'm not going to do is destroy my life because I was living in emotional debt. Yeah. So you got to count the cost, and you got to take it seriously. And unfortunately, there's no ledger book for your emotions. I can't look and go, oh yeah, but you can kind of feel it, and you can kind of talk about it. And that's where, we had a million conversations about it.
I think I love the way that you brought that up, because you were really intentional about, I am not willing to shortchange our kids. I'm also not willing to shortchange this church, because I can't keep up. They deserve the best as well. And so if they can't get the best of me, I want to make sure that they're getting the best out of somebody that can give them the attention that it needs to help this community thrive. And so for us, it's been kind of this constant restructuring over time and over different life seasons as things do change and progress. Hudson's at a better place now, where it's like, the way that we function in our relationship, the way that we function within the church, those things have fluctuated over time. I'm not working a 9-to-5 situation because, quite frankly, for the longest time, that was not even possible. Hudson was getting sent home from school an hour after he got there. Somebody needed to be available to manage that. And that couldn't be you in that particular instance, because you are needed to lead this ship. So us finding those different balances within our relationships as well, where it's like, how can we make time and room for each other? How do we make space for these changes to happen?
I think you got to count the cost going with your eyes wide open.
Yeah.
So like, I remember even in that season, I was starting to really feel emotionally depleted. And so I had to make certain changes of reordering my life, of telling people no a lot. Yeah. Which,
nobody likes to do.
Nobody likes to do. You don't like to do that. And a lot of times, when it comes to their pastor, people don't like to hear the word no, right? So, and like, I don't like disappointing people. I like, we didn't start One Church. I'm like, I tell you what, I'm really excited about is telling people no. Yeah. No, it was like, man, I couldn't wait to help people and all this. And so at some point I had to start saying, you know what, you're going to need to go to that person for this. I started telling people a lot of no. And, even just the way I would do weekend services, of going like, instead of, necessarily being super available, like, I've got to go rest more. Like, I've got to go get off my feet.
That was literally something I was just going to say.
That was hard.
Yeah.
Well, because, for a lot of reasons. One, I enjoy the interactions and all this, but I'm looking up and I'm like, you know what? Everybody's coming to me, and they're neglecting. We got this awesome team of people ready to pray, but everybody's wanting it from me. And then also, I didn't want people to think I'm some kind of diva. I didn't want people to think I'm some kind of like, oh, he preaches and then he just vanishes, and he's not he's making it about him, or he's and so I had some fear of being misunderstood. Yeah. And, I didn't want to lose the heart of the church. Yeah. and all this, and so there was a lot of fear in that, but I looked and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to burn myself out, man.
That's probably one of the few things I've been like, I'm telling you, you have to do. I'm generally not real bossy in our relationship, but I was like, no, I'm not asking. I'm telling you have to walk out the side door. Yeah. Because
so you give to everybody else, and then, because what was happening is I would go home on Sundays and I was a zombie. I couldn't even play with my kids. I had no energy for my family. Like, Sunday's like this Sabbath, and it's like, my kids are excited and they want to play, and I'm gassed.
Well, and even beyond that, it again reflects into the rest of your week. You're starting off your week absolutely drained and exhausted. Yeah. And so what are you even you're not able to bring your fullest self to the table to serve the church in the areas it really needs your practical leadership and things that only you can do throughout the week. Yeah. And so all these things that other people are gifted to do and quite frankly should be able to do, people who are amazing in places of prayer and support, people who are amazing in counseling situations, and you know what I mean? Those people should be in those positions and leading in that way. It shouldn't, your smirk is killing me. What is this?
Sorry, I was just... I don't want to interrupt. You feel free to finish.
No, I mean, now I can't even finish. Okay. I'm done.
I was just thinking back. I remember when I was in a season where I was right on the. I wouldn't say burnout, but I was like.
You can say burnout.
I was on the verge, like I was pushing, and I remember a really nice lady in our church coming up to me after one of the services. She's like, "Pastor, are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What's up?" She's like, "You were slurring your words."
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I was? She's like, yeah. I was like, you know what? I think I need to take a break.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No doubt. That is.
I think I need to take a vacation.
I don't think I've ever heard that. No, I mean, honestly though, like, gosh, all jokes aside, like that's terrible.
Well, we were doing 4 services. So I was, again,
back to back.
Yeah. So I think, again, I think we have more control of our lives than we sometimes think we do. We have assumed constraints. Well, dude, if I don't do that, I'm not going to get the bonus. If I do that, I might not get promoted. If I do that, I'm going to upset this person. If I do that, okay.
Or if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
You'd be shocked how many people would step up and fill a void once it's there that you don't even know about, that are in the wings and are incredibly gifted in that space and would love the work.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have more assumed constraints that we put on ourselves in terms of the power we have of our lives to make decisions. Like, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Well, I can't quit the PTA. I've been doing it for 20 years. Yeah, that's cool. Somebody was doing it before you got there. Like, you can totally not do it.
If you die tomorrow, somebody else will step in and pick it up. I mean, not to be morbid, but like sometimes I think some people feel such intense anxiety around letting go of things that they work on and that they own. You almost have to put them in that headspace. You have to ask them the question that way. If you die tomorrow, what's going to happen to it? And make them think it all the way through out loud, because sometimes, their first reaction is, well, it's just going to fall apart. Okay. Is that the worst thing that could happen? Or, and then oftentimes we realize, oh, I guess it's not as life and death as I thought. Or, well, then so-and-so would have to step up and do it, at least short term. And then what? You keep them thinking down that road. And then what? Well, then eventually somebody, they could train somebody else to do this. Okay, and then what? And then they would own that role. And could it thrive again? Yeah, it could thrive again. Okay, so why can't that happen when you're alive? Yeah. So you were mentioning, I don't want to interrupt you if you had another thought.
I'm good.
Okay, so I'm done. I'm done thinking.
I can go all day.
So we kind of started talking about some strategies that, you talked about with the emotional budgeting and which I love that language, because I think most of us understand it's very basic. It's the amount in and the amount out, and this is what you've got, and otherwise you're going into debt. Some other strategies that I had been reading up on that I thought were really fascinating along the way, a couple things. One of them, a Harvard study was done, and they were talking about one of the key factors to success when you're going through like they called it a visionary change. So like, for example, what we're doing with the church right now, when you're taking them through something that's a monumental change. And obviously this can be on a personal level, not just an organizational level, but let's take the organization, for example.
By the way, I'm sorry. I'm so glad people are getting to hear you talk more. I'm dead serious. Like, people hear me talk all the time, and I talk about you, and it's like, and I'm like, you gotta understand how smart this lady is. Like, this lady's brilliant. I realize, like, because as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, I get this every single day to get to do this, and other people aren't exposed to it. Totally separate note. I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. I'm really, really glad we're doing this, if for no other reason. People get to hear your brain work.
Well, man, geez.
So, sorry to interrupt. Back to your point.
I really appreciate you. I personally think you're very biased because, like, nobody else wants to sit on a date night with me and be like, did you know they found the first newborn great white last week? And you're like, okay, good for you.
Like, really?
Yeah, you are wonderful at, like, just being interested. But thank you. I appreciate it. I swear it's not the only thing I talk about. I know everybody thinks it is. It's not. I occasionally
You also talk about eels.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving back, Harvard study.
Yes.
All right. So
I'm tracking. I was listening.
All right. So one of the things they were saying is when you are making a pivotal, visionary change like that, equally important key to success, like the determined outcomes, not just casting vision for what you're about to do and what's going to change, but also spending as much time reminding people of what's staying the same. I thought that was incredibly fascinating. And I think a lot of it has to do with, it's a huge paper. You can go read the whole thing. But I thought what was really fascinating was they were saying it's so important for people to still understand what is grounded and what is unchanged so that they can feel their feet on the ground and then be able to get excited about what's coming next. When you feel like absolutely everything is unmoored, which is how it can feel sometimes when you're going through a really pivotal change like that, people start to feel like things are spiraling out of control. They start feeling resistant to change because it feels like too much too fast. And so if you're keeping in front of them, guys, these are the core values that do not change. These are the things that we believe in and we will not move. These are even just the habitual things that we will keep doing, the huddles that we're gonna have, crew huddle, or these are the devotional moments we're gonna have. These are the all staff things we're going to do. These like very scheduled, concrete pillars help people stay in a headspace where they're like, we have our true north, we know who we are, and so now I can feel excited about change instead of overwhelmed by it. I found that to be such a fascinating piece of information, and I think that's really good for our personal lives too. When you're going through massive bits of change, right? We have some people in our family, they just had twin babies, they bought a house, they've got all kinds of stuff going on, and then in the midst of that, it's like, it can start feeling like chaos. Well, what do we have to cling to? What are the constants in our marriage? Let's talk about things like that. Talk about things in our faith, our extended family that's here for us. Those, consistently reminding yourselves of those constants is a really helpful thing.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I'm glad you said values, because I think that is like, things, strategies change, systems change, you outgrow things, like, it's going to happen, but the values stay the same. But I think it's worth noting the values feel differently in different seasons and different stages.
Unpack that. What do you mean?
So like, if you think of, so again, let's take our kids. So we take Ella, right? She's 15 now. In her process of growing up, okay, the way we've related to her, we've always related to her with love, communication, those type things, right? So our values have remained the same, but the way that we interact, or the way the relationship with her feels, is different. Because we like, when she was little, she sat on my lap and we snuggled, and I nuzzled her neck with my nose and whatever, right? Well, I don't do that when she's 15. It's totally different. It'll be different when she's 30. So like, when you think about, particularly from an organizational standpoint, as a church, right, we say, we have our values. Well, those values are going to feel different depending on the number of people that are in the room. The size of it. So in some ways, I think sometimes people misunderstand and they go, hey, our values changed, but actually no, the value remained the same. It just feels, it feels different because it's 15 and not 3. You know what I'm saying? Like that. So like, I think we have to kind of work through our feelings about, even like, again, as an organization gets bigger, sometimes it can feel a little bit less personable. Like, you don't know everybody. I don't know everybody here, right? So it feels less personable. But the reality is, if the values are, we're trying to make room for as many people as we can, and we want, we want to grow this for the right reasons, that might mean you know 15 people really, really well, and that might mean 95% of the people, you don't know, but you've got a group that you're very, very tight with, and it's still about people.
Yeah.
We're still taking care of people. It's just you don't know everybody, so it feels different.
You know what's sorry.
Because you see a lot of strangers.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we quit valuing people.
Yeah. That was actually, you just touched on what I was going to say. Is I think so much of it is perception too versus actual reality, because we could do a whole other podcast on like small church, big church, pros, cons, whatever. But the reality is, in your small church, you probably were really close with 15 to 20 people.
Right.
The church could be, theoretically, 5,000 people. You still are close to 15 to 20 people. None of that relational stuff actually changed for you. Right. Your perception changed that, now I don't know anybody. Well, no, you know the same amount. It's not like that's diluted somehow because there's more people. You're still having the same level of community with those people that you would have been close to no matter what. All of us, quite frankly, are only capable of building close-knit community with a finite number of people. You can't be close to 5,000 people.
I got to be careful in my life that I'm not making things about me.
Yeah.
So like even like Ella, when she was little, I was this big hero, right? And she told me all the time, oh my gosh, Dad, you're so huge. Dad, you're so strong. She would just ooh and ah, right? And it was like, made me feel good. Well, she doesn't ooh and ah anymore at 15. She's not impressed, okay?
No, she's still very impressed. It just takes on a different tone.
It's different. But so what I'm saying is like, sometimes like, man, is the way I'm relating to this team or this whatever entity it is, am I making this about me and how it's making me feel? Or am I really focusing on trying to help this other person or this team or this church or this whatever to reach its full potential? And frankly, that might mean actually it's not as touchy-feely with me. It's not about me.
Right.
It's actually making it less dependent on me.
Right.
The irony is
that's what's helping it grow.
And that's what I was going through even in the times where I was fully accessible all the time. And it made me had some kind of sense of like, okay, I've got my arms around everybody. Yeah. And the irony is, when I didn't do that anymore, our church got healthier. Yeah. Leaders stepped up more. Right. People, and I started to see now these people start to reach their potential.
Right.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing anyway.
Right.
So if we got to be careful that if something is changing and I'm feeling funny about it, I might be feeling bad about it, my bad feeling may not mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
Or that
Am I aligning with that true north value that we've stated from the beginning? And I measure everything against that. And that's the piece that's unchanging in the midst of change.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really, really good. One of the other things that I read, there were a couple more that I wanted to run by you. One that I've specifically actually already posed to you before, and it's been an ongoing like month-long conversation I want to bring into that. But the other one was, it was fascinating to me how important they were saying in multiple different studies that marking the end of an era or the beginning of an era is so important in your life. Because they actually were finding that physiologically, like in your brain, you mentally have a hard time switching out of the old mindset from the previous life season that you were in into the new one without something that your brain recognizes as like a concrete stop or start. Which is also something that it's like, well, duh. Now you look back at the Bible and you go, oh, it's amazing how that makes sense, and it's right there in front of us. The people of Israel, the Jewish culture, is really amazing at that. They have so many seasonal things, feasts, holidays, remembrances, monuments that you see along the way throughout the Bible, where they are marking leaving a place, arriving at a place, the death of something, the birth of something, or, they were so intentional about that. And it's like, now we're finding that is incredibly important. Therapists do it all the time. That was something we talked about last week. Like, a therapist will tell you to write a letter and burn it, right? To signify letting go of something, or hold a rock and, maybe write even some things on that and throw it in a pond, whatever. They have you, when they're helping you deal with trauma or even just interpersonal relationships and I'm not a therapist, so I'm not trying to tell people what to do here, but I'm just saying things that have been communicated to me at times. That those markers help your brain recognize it's time for me to move out of that season. I've processed all of this, or even if it's a life change, I'm going from not married to married. What do? We have a wedding. Mm-hmm. It's the marking of a beginning of an era. It helps you make that change. And it was really fascinating reading through how much they were saying, like 80% of us, I believe was the number, don't mark major life changes. And so we tend to struggle to make the mental shift.
I read a book one time called The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins.
Yeah.
And he talks about the first 90 days in a new position, a new role. So again, would be in line with change, and you got promoted or whatever. And so he said to absolutely do that. He said, you need to go throw some kind of party. You need to have some kind of dinner. You have to have some sort of like, altar, right? Essentially that you build, and you go, I'm promoting myself today. You know, ultimately, like I am now in this because you did that other job for all of those years, all of that time, and you were in that mindset. And sometimes if you don't mentally put that stake in the ground and go, okay, now I'm going to think this way. I'm going to elevate my thinking. You sort of just go into this new season with this old mind.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you have to formalize it, like formally do it, promote yourself, do that in your head to where, now I'm thinking this way. Otherwise, if you kind of meander your way into it, a lot of times you're still thinking in this other way.
And once I read that, it really did kind of spark for me, like so many times in my life. I'm like, oh yeah, I was just wandering in with an old mindset into a new season. And so that was a powerful one for me regarding change. The last one sounds so goofy, but I think it's really important. And I posed this question to you about a month ago, and it took you like a month to think of something. The question was, what is a goal that you have? So not just like a like to, but an actual actionable goal that is purely frivolous. And you had such a hard time coming up with one.
I'm not a frivolous guy.
You're not a frivolous guy. And most people, so it's interesting. I know some people may or may not be aware of the Enneagram if you're listening to this podcast. But it's basically just 9 personality types. It just helps people understand themselves better. You are an 8, which is just such a practical, driven personality type. But you have what they call wings, which are like personality types that are adjacent to it and are different, bring about a different energy. So one of your wings is a 7, which is just a total fun-loving whatever. So you have that. Like, you love to have fun. You're such a fun person. But at the heart of it all, you have a hard time having fun if it doesn't have a point. It has to have a purpose. You're like, I will have a fun on a date with you because it's good for our marriage. I will, have a fun workout because it's helping me get more fit, whatever. So that was the big struggle for you with when I said, come up with a purely frivolous goal. Everything had a point. You were going to read a certain, number of books or whatever. No, you're not allowed to read these self-help books that the whole point is to make you a better leader. That's not bad, but that's not a purely frivolous goal. And it was interesting to me seeing how making space for something that was truly just for the joy of it in people's lives, and the research that showed how much that boosts your creativity within your work. It boosts your overall mental well-being and your sense that you're not just this cog in a wheel, but that you are a whole human separate with a purpose. It actually did inadvertently end up boosting all these other areas of your life, even though that wasn't the intention. So do you have a purely frivolous goal?
So I've been working on it.
Like to share?
I've been working on it. I got a few that I'm thinking about.
Okay, shoot.
Before I do though, I want to speak to what you said earlier. And this is, so yeah, I think I was born a 7, which is the
more fun,
loving,
gregarious,
right? Like I was if you talk to my parents, they'll tell you I got in trouble at school a lot, class clown, whatever, right? Like I like to have a good time. Like I kind of showed up.
Quick,
learning
true, fun story.
Was secondary
Greg
or
set
tertiary.
a tarantula free in his school.
You can't put this on.
It can be deleted later, but this room needs to know. I just learned this after being with this man almost 20 years.
Confirm
and I
or deny.
made him call his mother and confess at the very moment that I learned this. True or false? I made you call her at like 11 o'clock at night and confess this as a grown man in his 40s. He set a tarantula free in his school, and they could not find it until they came in the next day.
Hopefully the statute of limitations is
and there was a monstrous web.
The biggest spider web I've ever seen.
In the corner of this room with a giant tarantula in it. Yeah. Anyways, that is just a microcosm of the natural personality that he was born with.
To be fair, it was the teacher's tarantula that she brought. It was earth science. And I simply opened up the...
So you were just discovering science.
I mean, I didn't... I set it free, right? I mean, I want to see what it would do out in the...
Do not amen that decision. Come on, that's terrible. I'm sure the tarantula did enjoy the extra space.
I think it did. I think it did.
All right.
Yeah, so I think I was a 7, and I think in some ways life's kind of made me an 8. Mm-hmm. I think I had a wing 8, but I think over time...
You flip-flopped.
I think I flip-flopped over time, especially like, you take on responsibility, take on big projects, you got to get decisive, you got to make stuff happen, you got. So I think it's kind of leaned me into that part of my personality, and even like it kind of jarred me a little bit because like when you asked me, hey, you got to come up with a frivolous goal, like probably 20 years ago I could have done that like this, and I was having a really hard time, so it was kind of indicative of just how life can go sometimes. But and I will say this other thing, and this is going to sound like I'm sucking up, but I'm not. I'm just communicating. I'm telling you the truth. I think a big part of me not feeling like I need a lot of that is how much fun I have with you just doing whatever. So like to be honest, like you said, hey, we do dates and have fun because it's good for our marriage. That's not true. I don't do it because it's good for our marriage. It is good for our marriage, but I do it because I really love hanging out with you. I feel totally at peace in my own skin. We have a lot of shared things that we shared interests, and and then frankly, honestly, just being in your presence, like being around you, whether it's going to a place we've been to a million times or going to a new place, you in my life in that way meets that need for me. So I don't necessarily have to go out and try to find that other places, so.
Thank you, hon. That's definitely mutual.
I'm fortunate for that. So, okay, frivolous goal. I was thinking this year I might want to really learn how to Dougie.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I
think it's a cool dance move. Like you see people do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I can Dougie a little bit.
I'm here for it.
I can Dougie a little bit, but you see some people really Dougie. Like they can add a lot of variations. Like I'd like to be able to do different.
You literally are saying, teach me how to Dougie.
I'd like to be able to teach others how to Dougie. I'd like to be so good at it that I could be a Dougie teacher. So yeah, I mean that's pretty frivolous, right? I mean that's not.
I think it's perfect.
There's not a lot of application.
No. Aside from just spreading joy of being able to teach somebody else how to do it too.
I'd like to be a Dougie that people admire.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying?
That is a great.
So like that dude can Dougie. Yeah.
That is an
I'm not
excellent.
there yet. Okay, so there's another one I was thinking is write a song.
Okay.
Maybe write a song.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Exercise. You are so good with not just words, but you really are good at just like coming up with random melodies and beats and things that go together. Like you don't have any kind of formal musical training or but you just kind of have it in your head. It's like Rick Rubin. Like you just have this thing where you can just kind of hear it, and then once you can get it out of your head and start describing it to other people, it's like, oh dang, that's really good. That's a vibe.
Every once in a while, one church music will invite me in or whatever. And the tough thing is, because I don't sing good, I can hear it in my head, but then it comes out of my mouth and they're like, really? And I'm like, oh, that wasn't it. It sounds different in my head, Yeah. The other thing, by the way, I heard somebody the other day, speaking of frivolous, they were talking about how their family has a tradition of eating pheasant.
Okay.
And I was like, I've never tasted pheasant, so maybe I don't know, is that a goal? Was that a frivolous goal?
I mean, sure. that you're sometimes.
So how about 3 frivolous goals? I was at 0
round of
for
applause.
a month.
I know, that was
Okay.
amazing. Every goal you sent me, I was like, nope, back to the drawing board. I felt kind of bad, but I was like, I need you to come up with something purely frivolous. It was fun. I would encourage people to actually do that exercise because I think it is. I mean, look at like you have a sparkle in your eye right now just talking about it.
I'm imagining myself doing the Dougie.
While eating pheasant.
Yeah.
And it's like a great compliment. Yeah. But truly, it does like spark that just kind of pure piece of us, right? That's really, really good for you. And so for me, one of the ones I decided to do this year was I wanted to learn basically like circus performance type stuff, right? Which like, what application does that have to my life?
Bearded lady?
No. Like the acrobatics, right? So I just started taking like the silks class, like climbing the silks and aerial hoop and stuff like that. Greg's been getting such a kick out of it, which I guess technically you could say that that's not purely frivolous, right? Because
no, that's so, I mean, it's fitness, right? I mean, but
well, I was actually thinking like I wasn't even thinking about fitness. I was thinking like it's a good backup plan for me if I ever need to run away to the circus.
Right.
Because, I mean, you just never know when you're going to need to do that in life.
We could be a heck of an act. You're on the silks and I'm doing the Dougie.
I mean,
it's going to be.
True. This is going to be good.
This is
feel
gonna
confident.
be big.
You can't. Guys, have you ever thought about like running away to the circus? I mean, they're not going to just take you on and like pay you and house you from town to town if you don't have a skill set. I can't grow a good beard, so I needed an alternative skill set. I'm losing people.
This is really going off the rails.
No,
who's in charge here?
Yeah, no. It really, all jokes aside, it is something I've just always wanted to do. I just thought it was so amazing and beautiful. I did dance my whole life growing up, and it was such a source of joy for me. And so I thought, you know what, this is somewhat familiar in that sense. And it's bringing back to life these pieces of me that have been dormant for so long and that bring so much joy. It is good for me physically and physical health beyond that. But it's also challenging me in all these new ways, these things that I've never done before and that are so hard. I'm coming home like bruised and bleeding all the time. And I love it because it's just such a unique challenge. And so I think those things are good. You need goals in your life that... And again, not just bucket lists like, oh, I hope maybe. Actual actionable goals that you do that when you get to the end of your life and you're laying on your deathbed, that you just close your eyes and smile and go, I really did that. Like in this one shot on this rock, I did that. And there's something so rich. You can call it, I don't know that frivolous even really is a good word because it's not in the grand scheme of things. I think a God that designed us to find joy in the things that he put around us, and he gave us the ability to experience joy and to have the creativity to come up with things like this, like dances and acrobatics and whatever it is for you. Why would he not also intend for us to partake in these things in this life? I think there's a reason that we see Jesus' first miracle happening at a wedding, and it's quite frankly purely frivolous in that sense. Because I think that he wanted to lay groundwork for us, that there's more than just the nuts and bolts of life. That the richness of it is in the experiences and the relationship and just the joyful things we get to do.
Very good.
So, all right, there was another one that, and by the way, I'd like to check in with our producer. I'm not sure where he went. He's back there. How we doing here? All right. You have anything you need from me? All right. All right. I want one that actually may even be a jumping off point for you into your next conversation, because episode 002 with a guest is, I think, just going to be a really interesting one. You guys are both leaders and such thoughtful people, but it still kind of ties into change and what we're talking about here. You have told the story about when you used to tell me when things slow down. Why don't you recap that? Because like you always.
Well, it was an accidental lie.
Yeah.
Like, so it wasn't.
That's
like,
what I love about it. You
it
would
wasn't
not intentionally lie.
No,
to
I
me.
meant it. I thought
Yeah.
I was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But it was kind of that. I think probably in my younger years, you look at the hill you're trying to take, and you think, okay, once we get this hill, it's all about to slow down. And so we'd be running hard, and I'd say, hey, I got about 2 more months of this, and once we get there, it's all gonna really, cool out, and don't worry, and then we'd get over that hill, and all of a sudden there's another hill, and so now we're taking that hill, and now we're taking that hill, and I somehow had fooled myself into thinking that once you
it would slow down.
Yeah, and the reality is, you take some ground, now you got to settle that ground. Now you've got to, you've brought on more, right? And more is
now
more.
You've got that much more land to manage, basically.
And so at some point I just started to realize that I was wrong. And so I just quit making that promise.
You actually came to me and said, quote, "I'm sorry, I've lied to you." And I'm thinking, what happened? I'm like imagining this. And you're like, well, I didn't mean to. I'm like, this is so confusing.
I lied to me too.
Yeah. But you're like, I keep saying when things slow down. And you're like, I got to be honest, I don't think it ever is going to slow down. And I think that's a good one to talk about because people in general, I think we all tend to tell ourselves that lie. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that things slow down. I think they just change. They change direction a little bit, or maybe it doesn't get slower, but the elevation is less intense. You're not climbing straight uphill. You're just walking across a gentle meadow for a little bit. But I think understanding and not believing that lie, because then you can kind of just end up running from season to season with this feeling of like, if I push hard enough in this one, then I can take a breather in the next one. Well, no, because something will always come up in the next one that will require your time, energy, and attention. So it's more about actually learning to find a pace that is manageable. Do you have anything in particular for, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, man, like you said, I think that could be a very, very long conversation. And there's a lot of tilting of the prism, I think, on that question. I think if I look back and try to, codify a little bit of my journey personally with that, was learning how to take a break and learning how to rest mentally. Because, you can go take a week or 2 off, and if you're still bearing the weight of the responsibility, at some point you gotta let that burden off, right? And so learning how to do that, took me some time. And then also, I think, stepping back in each season and really looking at your life and going, okay, if it's not that I want things to necessarily slow down or that I'm going to do less work, because that's part of the joy of life. Like, work isn't God's punishment for sin. Right? Like they had great jobs before they sinned. Mm-hmm. Like, so it's really going in each season. Like, I do want to work. I don't want. I remember hearing a guy say one time, he was like, hey, somebody said, we need to come up with an idea so good we never have to work another day. And he goes, no, man, I want to come up with an idea so good I wake up every day wanting to work.
Yeah.
And so really, like, I think like with the season, the goal isn't to go, hey, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to not work. I think it's really stepping back and going, what is the best use of my time? What do I need to put on my to-don't list?
Yeah.
What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to put down? What do I need to give away? You know what I'm saying? So that you're not just taking on more. It's like juggling, right? And it's like, now here's a 4th ball and a 5th ball and a 6th ball and a 7th ball. Even if you're really good at some point, and then someone throws you a bowling ball, it's like,
right. Or a live baby.
Yeah. So you've got to, I think, to go, I always want to be juggling. Right. I always want to be I want to be working, not in a frantic pace and not in an undisciplined fashion where I'm just taking on so much and I'm trying to do it all. Mm-hmm. So I think having those, check-ins, those times that you step out of the whirlwind, okay, whether it's every 4 months, every 6 months, once a year, you step back, you really evaluate and go, hey, the goal here isn't to slow down. The goal is to make sure I'm doing the right work.
Yes.
That I'm doing the right thing, and to reevaluate and then make the necessary changes.
I think this is a good place for us to kind of wrap up. I love that you said to don't list. I think that's just as important, if not more so, than people's to do. That's a good one to just chew on. And I think we kind of came full circle back to when we first started talking about change and the fact that, change will come along no matter what, and it will make room for itself on your plate or in your juggling act, however you want to call it. And it's up to us to take control of it and to decide what we're going to allow on and off those lists. So thank you for that. I think
Signing off.
I think that tees up perfectly to maybe some questions about work-life balance and whether that's a myth or a real thing and how you would approach it. Would you be down to do that next time around? All right.
I'll talk about whatever you want.
Honey, you were a great off-the-cuff, jump in. You didn't say anything I felt was inappropriate.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Just stay tuned.
Yeah, give it time. Seriously, though, I thank you for being willing to do this, for being game. I know you had reservations, but you have such an incredible thought process on things. I love hearing the way that you think. And I know a lot of other people do too. And so for them to get to hear you outside of a Sunday setting and just hear your external processing and understand how you get to the places that you do, because honestly, the journey there is so rich to the conclusions that you come to, not just the ones that you give us in a final form. So thank you for being willing to do that. And thank you to everybody that did this with us today. We did it. We got the first one in the books.
All right.
That's a wrap. See you next week.